visitation that Jeff Sessions has brought honor to the title of United States Attorney General, and we are privileged to have him here in the state of Arkansas today. So please join me in welcoming United States Attorney General Jeff Sessions.
Thank you all. Well, good. Thank you. It's so good to be with you. It is good to be in the real world. I got to tell you, where important things are known, like football. You know, when I was Attorney General of Alabama, we had a guy. We prosecuted people who led our football players astray. You know, we had a number of those cases. You know, you can't have them disqualified for some illegal contacts and things. But Cody, thank you for what you're doing here. This office is moving forward, really. You have a 60% increase in defendants being prosecuted this year over last year, and last year was an increase too. And I think you also, by the by, had a 25% reduction in violent crime in the first 6 months of this year. So I think there is a connection. I'll talk about it a little bit later, but there is a connection between identifying violent criminals, prosecuting them effectively, incarcerating them for a reasonable amount of time. It does make the community safer. And you just can't let these people out there grow and get more powerful, more arrogant, more violent, and it's just not good. So I appreciate what you're doing. And on behalf of President Trump, I want to thank all the federal officers who are here today. Dana Nichols at ATF, Dana, there you are, and Justin King at DEA, Jay Tuck of the United States Marshal Service, Diane Upchurch at FBI, Frank Trevino at ICE, and Tamara Cantu of IRS, Eddie Tao of Postal Inspectors, and Chris Pruitt of Secret Service. So we appreciate you. I am inexpressibly proud of our federal law officers, but we are not unaware of an important fact. And I understand it, and I talk about it everywhere I go. 85% of the law officers in America are state and local. And the president sent us an order to reduce crime, and we know who we got to work with to get that done. And that's what I know. The simple arithmetic tells us that if we aren't working together, we're not going to be effective. I'd also like to thank then John Allison and Colonel Bill Brown of the Arkansas State Police, President Scott Bradley of the Arkansas Sheriff's Association, Sheriffs Brown, Jones, Holliday, Hollenbach, and Riles, I understand, are here, Chief Buckner and Chief Davis, 20 state prosecutors, and look forward to meeting with you a little privately, some of you, hopefully, before we get away today. Governor Hutchinson, I'll see him this afternoon. We're going to be doing a school violence seminar, and look forward to being with him. He was the youngest United States attorney when we came in together in 81, 82. I was pretty young myself at the time. And now he's gone on to be the governor. I'm proud of him. I served with Tim in the Senate, and of course Senator Bozeman, such a good friend, and I'm really, really proud to know and get to know that Razorback. Frank Broyles trained senator, and Tom Cotton. I got to tell you, Tom has been a great addition to the Senate, and right now Tom Cotton has made a difference on more than one occasion on criminal justice issues. He is actually, I would say, probably the most solid pro-law enforcement guy we got right now on some issues that in the last couple of years have been dicey. So the Department of Justice is proud to listen to you. We want to be a force multiplier for you. We want to give you the tools you need to be successful and put dangerous criminals behind bars and make the community safer. Right now, because of 2015 Supreme Court decision holding that the definition of violent crime in the statute that carries additional penalties is too vague. I'm not here to argue the merits of it. It was 7-1 against us, but it has taken a valuable tool from us, and it's impacted our law enforcement abilities. The Johnson case, you may have heard of it, is very significant. So the consequences have been devastating in a number of areas. And I like to talk about it just because Congress can help us too in some of the matters that we're facing. We've got to be careful. We're not going to make major changes in law enforcement, but there's some things we're going to need. So this court decision has led to the release of a lot of dangerous criminals, including one right here in Little Rock. 8 months after he was released from prison, under the Johnson case ruling, that he was rearrested for aggravated assault and domestic battery. A year after that, he was arrested for kidnapping, rape, aggravated assault, battery, and terroristic threats. He is accused of raping a 62-year-old woman and an autistic homeless man. The court ruling has also led to the release of a man who allegedly punched a pregnant woman in a nightclub in Forest City. When police intervened, he allegedly assaulted 3 of them, cutting one of them on the forehead. A man from Pine Bluff got 15-year sentence, cut in half after this decision. A year later, he got into an argument with a co-worker, and according to the allegations, the co-worker turned around to walk away when the defendant sucker punched him, broke his nose, eye sockets, chipped a tooth, and busted his lip. 2 of these criminals I've talked about now are back in prison. They were let out, they reoffended, and now they're back in prison. But the consequences are not limited to Arkansas. This is a nationwide problem. It's a cause for deep concern. In Utah, a career criminal released by this decision tortured and murdered 2 teenagers, then threw their bodies down a mine shaft. A released career criminal in California allegedly murdered his father, carjacked a vehicle, and killed the driver. In Oregon, a man released a career criminal, held a Subway sandwich shop hostage, and then shot a police officer just 18 days after he was released. Sadly, I could go on and on, but why did it happen? So the Supreme Court struck down a law called the Armed Career Criminal Act. It had been on the books for 30 years, applied thousands of times. This is the law that requires a minimum 15-year sentence. It means they'll serve about 12 under federal law, just a minimum 12-year effective sentence for felons caught with a firearm and after 3 prior felony or serious drug trafficking convictions, violent crimes or serious drug trafficking crimes, 3 of them. So these are not, as you know, the experienced officers in this room, low-level, nonviolent drug offenders that everybody seems to think we're filling the jails up with. These are criminals who've already committed multiple serious offenses and were caught with a gun. This no little matter. In 2016, the United States Sentencing Commission found that nearly 7 out of 10 career criminals reoffended after being released. I wish we could do better on recidivism. I am supportive of programs that would help improve our recidivism rate. But those of you who've been around a long time, we hadn't seen it change much over 40 years. I just wish it were changeable in some easy way. We can work at it. We should work at it. Every 5, 10, 15% improvement in recidivism is a tremendous advantage to us all. But federal firearm offenders have been studied and found to be the most likely to be rearrested of any category of criminals. So these criminals that we're talking about under the Johnson decision are both. And they're serious offenders, repeat offenders, and firearm offenders. They're career criminals, and a professor in Iowa has reported to us that he thinks these are some of the most impactful prosecutions federal prosecutors can do. I was United States Attorney before the Armed Career Criminal Act occurred in 1984, and I was United States Attorney afterwards. I've seen the importance firsthand as we work to reduce crime in our communities. Nationwide, the Supreme Court's decision has resulted in more than 1,400 violent career criminals back onto our streets, including 18 here in Arkansas. 9 of those 18 have already been rearrested since they were released. 600 of the 1,400 criminals have been arrested again. And some have just been recently arrested. Some are still being evaluated for early release. So it's been only 3 years since that decision, but 42% of the offenders have been rearrested. On average, these 600 criminals have been arrested or reoffended 3 times in the last 3 years. Of the ones that have been arrested, on average, they've been arrested 3 times. Some of them more than 3, of course. A majority of those who've been out of prison for just 2 years, a majority, have been rearrested again. Releasing repeat offenders into the community has consequences. It has costs. And those of us who've been around a while know that. Every crime committed by a recidivist released under this court case would not have happened if the law had been enforced or it had been written better by Congress. Every one of their victims would not have been victimized. We must fix this. We must close this loophole so that violent career criminals are not let out of jail early. Their recidivism rate is staggering, but let's remember this is still likely an underrepresentation of their criminal activity, as anyone in this room would know that they rarely get caught on their first offense, and they certainly don't get caught on every offense they commit. We can only imagine how many crimes they have really committed and how many innocent people have been victimized. Releasing hardened criminals into our communities before they serve their minimum term is not fair to the victims of crime. It's not fair to law enforcement. You shouldn't have to go into danger time and again to arrest violent repeat offenders. Congress needs to help us. Our state legislatures need to help us and consider legislation that can help better target the criminals that need to serve more time in jail. We need to fix the law so that we can keep violent career criminals off our streets, and that shouldn't be controversial, really. 15, 12 years for a 4th serious offense is not too much time, particularly when a firearm is one of those offenses. So fortunately, some members of Congress are helping us. My good friend, and Senator Cotton, is a leader on this. I got to tell you, he's working on legislation that's intended to fix this problem for good, and I want to thank him for his leadership on this and other important criminal justice issues. We should look for effective and proven ways to reduce recidivism, and we are doing that. There is legislation afoot that at least with the report that deals with recidivism, I'm very supportive of it. I think and hope it will make some difference. It won't be as great as some people are predicting, but if it makes a solid difference, I am certainly supportive of it. And but reducing recidivism is hard. It isn't as if it hasn't been tried before, but we're going to work on it because it's important. Some people seem to think that crime rates are like the tides, you know, they just go up, birds migrate, whatever, and it's just, well, nothing we do makes any difference. I consider that a threat to the very notion of the work that we do. It tells our police officers and our investigators that what we do doesn't make much difference. We just go through the motions and all. But I think history, my experience is that what we do does make a difference. I firmly believe that. Effective law enforcement can bring down crime rates. It can make a difference, and we do it every day across this country. The professionals in law enforcement know what works to reduce crime. We've been studying and working on it for 40 years, making improvements. If somebody disagrees with that statement, they should consider this. These are interesting numbers. I was alive during most of this time. From 64 to 80, the overall violent crime rate tripled in this country. 64 to 80, 16 years, it tripled. People that used to didn't lock their doors, not in Arkansas and Alabama. And robbery tripled, rape tripled, aggravated assault nearly tripled, murder doubled. And then from 1991 to 2014, after the federal laws had been changed, after states improved, after we added AUSAs, after police departments were strengthened, after state DAs improved their offices and personnel, between that time, during when President Reagan really led the law enforcement charge nationally with Great Attorney General Ed Meese, there was a elimination of parole, the Speedy Trial Act, all this in federal court, the elimination of bail on appeal, unless you had a serious basis for your appeal, increased bail for dangerous criminals before trial. They could be locked up, the issuance of sentencing guidelines where people had to serve certain objective sentences, mandatory minimum sentences, and yes, the Armed Career Criminal Act. It just got hammered in the Johnson case. So we increased funding for DEA, FBI, ATF, federal prosecutors. Most states and cities followed that lead. Professionalism and improved training was dramatically increased throughout the country. And I believe we achieved a much more sophisticated law enforcement leaders in our state and local systems. We implemented proven policies throughout the country, community-based policing and things of that nature that we know worked. These were the biggest changes in law enforcement since the founding of this republic. These laws were critical to reestablishing public safety. We can't stand by and allow those gains to be eroded. So I was a federal prosecutor before the changes occurred and a prosecutor after the changes. I can tell you firsthand the difference that occurred. It's easy to see why. When a criminal knows with certainty that he is facing hard time, he is more willing to cooperate with the prosecutors and the police. On the other hand, when the sentence is uncertain, criminals are a lot more willing to take a chance and hold out. The certainty of a significant and fixed sentence helps us get criminals to hand over their crime bosses, the kingpins and the cartel leaders, and helps remove entire gangs of criminals from our streets. Left unaddressed, these organizations only get richer, they only get stronger, and get more arrogant, they get more violent. You've all seen that, placing whole neighborhoods at risk. So it may be obvious to say, but a recidivist can't hurt the community and commit crimes if he's in the slammer. That's one thing that's pretty clear. A lot of people would have committed crimes in the 1990s and 2000s. They didn't because they were locked up. Murders were cut in half since 1980. That is a tremendous achievement. How many people didn't die or suffer because of the decline in crime? We cannot abandon the laws that have worked. They have worked, and we don't need to pull away from them. These are the laws that help make our neighborhoods safer, preserve the lives and safety of untold American people. And this is important because in the years before President Trump took office, we began to see a troubling rise in crime after 30 years of decline. From 2014 to 2016, the violent crime rate went up. Instead of falling, it went up 7%. Robberies went up. Assaults went up nearly 10%. Rape went up by nearly 11%. Murder increased in 2 years 20%. 12% in 15, 8% in 16. Murder in this country. Here in Arkansas, the change was even more dramatic. The numbers indicate that the overall violent crime rate went up by nearly 15% here. Aggravated assault, nearly 16%. Rape went up nearly 21%. And murder by 29%. So I want the law officers in this room to know that this Department of Justice knows the challenges that you are facing. We know what you've been working on. We want to listen to you. We want to work with you, as does Cody on his team. Our goal is not to fill up the prisons. It's really not. Our goal is to reduce crime and keep every American safe. We should not keep people in prison longer than necessary, but proven policies and clear and certain punishment do in fact make this country safer. They just do. The day I was sworn in as Attorney General, President Trump sent me a clear order. He can send out orders pretty quick, and he's serious about it, and we salute. But this is one I really embraced, gotta tell you. And he told me, quote, reduce crime in America. He'll tell us exactly what to do, but reduce crime in America. I think that's a challenge for all of us. He wants us to take action and bring down crime, make this country safer. Unlike a lot of politicians, he understands that we all have to work together to reduce crime. We've done it before, and we can do it again. You and the 85% are the key to this. Congress has helped us in the past, and we're going to need their help now on some of the things that we're working on. So I want to say thank you again for letting me be here. Thank you for cooperating and supporting and working with so ably, as I know is happening, with our federal officers and our federal prosecutors. It's an honor to speak to you. On the front lines that you are defending the safety of the American citizens. We really appreciate you. In this joint effort, you can be certain about this. We have your back, and you have our thanks. Thank you all, and God bless. Thank you. Thank you all.
All right, I do want to thank you again for coming. I can tell you that what General Sessions says in public is exactly what he says in private. That's what he has tasked the U.S. attorneys with doing, our department heads, and he is a true believer, and he gives the benefit of the doubt to our citizens, and that is a perspective that has long been needed. So thank you for coming. He does want to visit with some state and local officials, and I think you all have been contacted about that. We're going to try, I don't know if Givens, I don't know who's going to take everybody over. We're going to go across to the conference room in a closed-door session, have a roundtable discussion with General Sessions. He wants to hear from some of you and visit with you about your experiences and your perspective. And so we're going to do that, and I appreciate you coming. Thank you very much.
State and local folks who've been asked to come across the hall, just follow me on over.
Yes, if you can play.